Good evening. I'm like the teacher. Welcome to the Town of Avon Advisory Plan Commission meeting. If you are interested in having a copy of the agenda, they are available on the tables to the right of the audience. We will be conducting business as outlined on the agenda. From time to time, the board may deviate from the agenda. As president of this body, I will inform those in attendance of any deviations. This meeting is being recorded for the public record. Because of this, we request that personal conversations are kept to a minimum and that all cell phones are set to vibrate or turned off. All phone calls shall be taken outside of the chambers. And I would also ask that if you want to have conversations, you also take those outside the chambers. If you are interested in commenting during the public hearing portion of the commission's deliberations, please sign up on the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Please address your comments to the board and not to staff or to the petitioner. Your comments should relate directly to the case at hand. During the conduct of the public hearing portion of the commission's deliberations, the petitioner will have 10 minutes to present their case to the commission. Remonstrators will have a total of 10 minutes to present objections to the petition, and we limit individual persons to 2 minutes. So that means 5 people total to remonstrate. Persons in support of the petition, other than the petitioner, will have 10 minutes to present support for the petition, and the same rules will apply. Finally, the petitioner will close the public hearing portion of the presentation with a 5-minute rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed, no additional testimony will be heard unless it is solicited by members of the commission during the question and answer phase of the commission's deliberations. Subdivision plat and development plan petitions are ministerial requests. That means that if the proposal meets the requirements set forth in the town's development ordinances, the Plan Commission must approve the request. In the interest of transparency, state law requires that the Plan Commission hold a public hearing, even if the development proposal must be approved. Responses to public comments and questions may be given once the public hearing portion is closed. We understand there may be several persons here tonight who wish to speak. In order to keep the meeting running in a timely fashion, we would request that you not repeat previous comments. Thank you for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting. Again, welcome to our meeting. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We need to do a roll call.
Jennifer Spencer.
Present.
Andrew Rockebrand.
Present.
Bill Reed. Here. Dave Kaufman. Here. Catherine Ransberg.
Here.
Paul Guckenberger. Greg Zuzan.
Okay, we have a quorum. I would like to point out that we are down 2 members tonight. So if there are any petitioners here who would prefer to have their cases heard by the entire commission as opposed to only 5 members, this would be the time to go ahead and request a continuance. If you go ahead and request a continuance right now, it will not count against you in terms of it being it won't count as the one continuance you're allowed to do by right, because this is the fact that we're down 2 is not your fault. So if any petitioners would like to, at this point, come forward and request a continuance, this would be the time to do it. If you request a continuance during your portion of the agenda, after it's been heard, it will count as your one single right to continue. Do we have anybody who has already signed up for continuance? Oh, I'm sorry. We need to go to the approval of the meeting minutes. So, has everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes from December 16th, 2024. And are there any changes, edits, questions about that? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes from December of 2024 as presented.
Second.
We having heard a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes from December 16th, 24, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting minutes are approved. We are now moving to the public comment section of the meeting. This is the opportunity for those of you who are here to speak on items that are not on tonight's agenda. If it is on tonight's agenda, then you can speak to it at that time. But if you want to speak about something that's not on tonight's agenda, this would be the time to come forward. Sir.
Madam Chairman, David Conklin, we're on. We would like to ask for a continuance after our presentation. We've got a lot of people here tonight, so we'd like to go ahead and hold the public hearing, but then ask for a continuance. I don't know how that falls into what you said, but I thought we ought to at least bring it up.
Mr. Taylor,
Yeah.
how would this affect their right to continuance?
Then it would be your continuance, not ours.
Okay, that's fine.
That's
That's great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So is there anybody here who would like to speak about anything that is not on tonight's agenda? Having had nobody step forward, the public comment section of the meeting is closed. We now have had one petitioner come forward and explain that they are going to be requesting a continuance. Is there anybody else who has requested a continuance? Linda, has anybody? No. Any other petitioners who would like to take advantage of the one time only opportunity to, yes, right. Okay. There being no continuances or agenda modifications, let's plow through. First item is Family Promise, Phase 2, ZA 2412.
Thank you, President Ransberg, members of the commission. If there's no objection from the commission or from the petitioner, we were thinking it might make more sense to do DPR 2416 first and then ZA 2412. They have the same petitioner, and the zoning amendment probably would have been better served being second on the agenda, since it allows for an expansion of what's proposed in the DPR.
I don't object to that. Does any of the members have any objection to ZA 2412 and DPR 2416 being heard and presented at the same time? We have a lot on the agenda tonight and a lot of people here, and it might be a good way to be more efficient with our time. Does anybody object to that? I would also suggest that since we're going to be doing both of those at the same time, that the petitioner be given 15 minutes to make their presentation. And then for those of you who are here, all remonstration about ZA 2412 and 2416 shall be all done at the same time. So you can address all of those at the same time instead of doing them separately. So go ahead.
Thank you. DPR 2416, commonly referred to as Family Promise or lofts on Avon. It's a request for a development plan approval. Property is located at 72 and 100 South Avon Avenue, just about a block south of the intersection of Avon Avenue and US 36. Site consists of 2 unplatted parcels, a little over a half an acre exclusive of right-of-way, and it is zoned R5. The parcels are currently unimproved, each having been previously improved with a single-family dwelling. The site was rezoned from C2 to R5 just a little less than a year ago in early 2024. This petition was continued from your December hearing in order to allow for filing of a variance that was necessary to allow for a 10-foot front yard setback. That variance petition was heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals on December 17th, and it was approved to allow for that reduced front yard setback along Avon Avenue. This request would provide for the construction of 7 residential dwelling units in a 5-unit townhouse building along Avon Avenue and a 2-unit townhouse building that would face north and front along a private access easement. And there would be off-street parking in between the buildings. There's also a waiver of development standards of the UDO to allow for a reduction in perpendicular parking space size. Those spaces would be 9 by 18 instead of the 10 by 20 required by the ordinance. Just taking a look at the property here is, of course, US 36 and Avon Avenue. The site is here where the blue star is over these two parcels on the west side of Avon Avenue. And just to the north is the private access easement that would provide access to the property. To the north here is the future Brewster site and the Circle K at the corner. The other ice cream establishment across Avon Avenue, another commercial use, and then 2 residential structures that we're going to talk about in the upcoming zoning amendment case. And then to the west back here is the intermediate school. Just a couple pictures here. This is a view of the site facing west across Avon Avenue. So here's the property. This is part of the adjacent site to the south that we're going to talk about also in a few minutes. That's a view of the site facing southwest from the northeast corner of the site. So you've got Avon Avenue running south here, and then this is the access easement that would provide access to vehicular access to this property. That's looking back northwest from the southeast corner of the site. So you've got the adjacent site here, and this is the subject site. And then this is just facing from the site back east across Avon Avenue. And then facing south along Avon Avenue, again, this is the adjacent site that we'll be talking about in a few minutes. And then finally facing north towards the vacant site here where Brewster's is proposed to go, and then the Circle K and the intersection of Avon and 36 there. This is a zoning map. As you can see, almost everything, well, everything immediately around the site is zoned C2. You just have this R5 that was rezoned early last year to provide for this type of development. Here's a look at the site plan. So again, here would be Avon Avenue running north and south. Here's the 5-unit building that would front Avon Avenue with the 10-foot front setback that was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Here's the 2-unit building in the back. Here's the access off of this private access easement to the parking area where you have the proposed 9 by 18 parking spaces. There's a look at the site landscape plan, which we found does meet the minimum requirements of the UDO. Here's the revised building elevations that have been updated to meet the minimum architectural standards in the UDO. This is, of course, the 5-unit building. This is the front of the building that would face Avon Avenue. This is the back that would face the parking lot. There's the 2-unit building. This is the front that would face north towards the access easement. That's the back that would face towards the retention pond. And then there's the side facing towards the parking lot, and then the other elevation facing west. So to talk about the waiver, there are, is it 4 or 5 findings, I believe, that are required. The first being that it doesn't create conditions detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare, because this is essentially a private parking lot that the public would rarely use. We don't see that it would have a negative impact on public health, safety, or welfare. Finding number 2 is that it be harmonious with the purpose and intent of the zoning district. Because the 9 by 18 space would be similar to what is allowed in other jurisdictions surrounding Avon, we think that 9 by 18 spaces would meet the purpose and intent of the R5 zoning district. Third finding, that it enhance the overall development plan, abutting streetscapes and neighborhoods in the surrounding area. We do believe that when you reduce those parking spaces from 10 by 20 to 9 by 18, and you get a resulting reduction of 38 square feet per space, that actually enhances the appearance of both the development and the surroundings, because you have less asphalt, you have more green space. So we do believe that enhances both the development itself and its surroundings. The fourth required finding, that it not produce an impractical site design or detract from the appearance. Again, this is for similar reasons. We think that reducing the amount of asphalt surface and having more green space does improve the appearance, and that it's not impractical to use a 9 by 18 parking space, which again is similar to what's allowed in surrounding jurisdictions. Finally, the fifth finding, that the proposal provide improved site design characteristics such as increased pedestrian connections, enhanced landscaping, tree preservation, or public art. Again, going back to the fact that you'll have an increased ratio of landscape surface to pavement, it provides both improvements to the site's design, aesthetically and environmentally, because you have less stormwater runoff that needs to go to a pond and be treated before going further downstream. So for all those reasons, we do find that the required findings have been met for a waiver, and we do recommend approval of the waiver request. And aside from the waiver request and the variance granted by the BZA, we find that the proposed development plan would be compliant with all the other requirements of the UDO, with the exception that a lighting plan has not been submitted. The petitioner has indicated they're not sure if they're going to be installing lighting, but if they do propose any outdoor lighting, it will need to meet the UDO. So we would condition our recommendation of approval on submission of a compliant lighting plan. Obviously, if they don't do any lighting and the site is compliant, then that would be moot at that point. So we do recommend approval of the DPR 2416, subject to those 5 conditions that were in the staff report. Basically standard conditions, with the additional condition for potential submission of a lighting plan, and just making sure that the development's substantially in compliance with the plans submitted that you've seen. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. If there are any, otherwise I can go on to the zoning request if you would like.
I do have a question about, so if I understand you correctly, there's no obligation to create an exterior lighting plan for this development, but if they do, it would have to meet our standards. Is that correct?
I think so. I mean, there are requirements in the UDO for lighting to make sure walkways are appropriately lit, and unless there's an exemption for multifamily residential that I'm not aware of, then they probably would have to do some lighting to meet that standard. But unless the ambient lighting from the adjacent streets and developments would light that area up sufficiently. So
I guess I'm confused. Is there a requirement for there to be, I mean, even though this is a small residential development, it's still a residential development. And it seems to me lighting of walkways and the parking area would be just as important to people living in this unit as they would be in any other development.
yes, I don't think there's an exemption for multifamily residential. So in that case, like if it were single family, we don't require, we don't require obviously lighting plans for single family dwellings. But I think there's not an exemption in here for multifamily. So unless one were pointed out, which we're not aware of, then that condition would require them to submit a lighting plan showing that they are meeting those standards.
Okay. If there's any further questions on this, or do we want to move on to the next part of this? Okay, let's move on.
Okay, next we have ZA 24-12, a request for approval of a zoning amendment, looking for a recommendation on that zoning amendment from you today for what we're calling Family Promise Phase 2. So this is located immediately to the south of the previous proposal. The addresses are 116 and 128 South Avon Avenue. It would be a full acre, including the adjacent right-of-way of Avon Avenue, but 0.84 acre outside of the right-of-way. This property, much like the property to the north was a year ago, it is now zone C2. Each parcel is improved with a dwelling structure. There's a single family and a duplex there. This petition was also continued from your December hearing to allow for the required introduction to the town council, which occurred December 19th. Again, already mentioned the other property being previously rezoned. So rezoning this site would allow for essentially a second phase of the project that I just described to you, which would be additional residential townhouse development. So the site here is the site covered by the purple star there. So these two parcels just immediately to the south of the site we just talked about there. And that's a look at the site facing west across Avon Avenue. So there's a single family dwelling there and a two-family dwelling or duplex there to the south. That's just looking kind of northwest to the back of the property. Facing south, so that's County Road 25 south, just south of the property. There's a small piece here that's owned by the school corporation, and actually the drive that comes in here is part of the school corporation's property, but County Road 25 south heads east from this intersection here. And that's just, again, a view of the adjacent site where the 7 units are proposed in the previous DPR. Zoning map, so here's the site we're talking about now, just immediately to the south of the R5 site to the north. Here's a conceptual site plan, so a little bit hard to see because it's a little grayed out, basically, so you can see this is the conceptual proposal for this property that is asking for a rezoning now. And then here's the proposal to the north with the 5-unit building along Avon Avenue and 2 units back here. So what they're proposing here is, 6, 7, 8 units, 7 units, I think, along Avon Avenue and 3 more units in the back. Again, it's a conceptual plan, which could change between now if the rezoning is approved and time of development plan review. So in considering a rezoning, the comprehensive plan is important. So this is a look at the future land use cluster map from the comprehensive plan. Here's the subject site in green. This guy here is a neighborhood retail recommendation. And again, here's the intersection of 36 and Avon. So a lot of this area is west of the intersection, but also including the intersection and just kind of overlapping just a little bit on the abutting site to the north, but not on this site. So as you may be aware from past cases, when the future land use cluster map doesn't provide a specific recommendation, the common practice is either to extend a nearby recommendation, which in this case would be neighborhood retail, or to interpret the comp plan as supportive of the existing zoning. In either case, that would be, you'd be looking at either a C1 zoning for a neighborhood retail recommendation or the existing C2 zoning that's on the zoning map right now. Neither one of those obviously would be consistent with the request to rezone to R5. However, staff would point out that there's a lot more to the comp plan than just the future land use cluster map. There's a lot of written goals in there, including to provide housing diversity and to increase allowed density and intensity in appropriate areas. And staff believes that this site would be appropriate to try to meet those 2 goals. Also, you should consider the recent rezoning of the abutting property to R5 as another factor weighing against or in balance with the future land use cluster map. So the 5 criteria that you need to pay a reasonable regard to in evaluating a zoning map amendment is 1, the comprehensive plan. We've talked about that. Even though it doesn't meet the future land use cluster map recommendation, we do think it meets other important goals in the plan. So we do think that that criteria should not be a roadblock to this proposed rezoning. Second criteria, the current conditions and character of structures in the district. It is a mix of commercial and residential structures in this area. There's longstanding historical residential use of this property that should be considered. The third criterion, the most desirable use for which the land in each zoning district is adapted. While this is zone C2 and some commercial sites could develop on this relatively small site, the size of the property would be restrictive or prohibitive for a lot of commercial development. So For that reason, we do think residential development is probably the most desirable use here. We have no reason to think that the proposed development would negatively impact property values throughout the jurisdiction. And we do think it would be responsible development and growth to rezone this to R5 and develop it accordingly. So for that reason, staff is recommending approval, or we're recommending that you forward a favorable recommendation to the town council on ZA 2412, subject to two conditions. One is that for dedication of right-of-way along Avon Avenue, matching the recommendation of the thoroughfare plan. And then just a note that a recreation impact fee would be assessed per unit at the time of permitting. Both of those things often happen at the time of platting, but since it's not anticipated that the site would be replatted, we thought it was appropriate to add those conditions at this time. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Is the retention pond that's designed for phase one sized for phase two as well? Because there's a lot more surface area in phase two.
I don't have the answer to that question. I don't know if Mr. Ilko has enough information to answer that, or if it would be something that would have to be answered by the petitioner.
Petitioner, okay.
Any further questions for staff? If not, we'll invite the petitioner to come forward. And just as a reminder, because we are combining both petitions together, you will have 15 minutes to present your case.
I hope I don't need 15 minutes.
I hope so too. It's going to could be a long night.
Steve Freehoff with Banning Engineering and Julie Randall. I'm sure you all know. Promise. Is it great?
How about now? All right. Paul did a,
We need you to give us your addresses also, please.
I don't know Julie's, but mine is 853 Columbia Road, Plainfield, Indiana, 46168.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. 238 North Vine Street in Plainfield, 46168.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank Paul for flipping the order of these and then combining both of them, because I think it makes a lot of sense for you to see the DPR discussion first and then the zoning amendment discussion second, to see how those two are interrelated. I don't have a big presentation. I really would just like to answer questions that you may have, and a couple of them that I'd like to touch on. You were concerned about site lighting in the development plan review. So we need to do a lighting study yet for this project and determine if we need parking lot lighting or if there is enough lighting from the buildings themselves, because this is a really small site, to safely light that parking lot area. So if we determine that we do need to add site lighting in the parking lot, light poles in the parking lot, then of course that'll be part of our permit submission with a photometric study for the planning staff to review. Question regarding underground detention. It is not sized for this site, but it's expandable. The reason we didn't size it for this site is there's still some uncertainty, whether the zoning would be approved and whether the project receives the grants to assist in building it. So we plan for it, but we just at this time can't put in a system big enough to handle both sites.
Are you done?
Unless anybody else has any questions, yes.
We'll take your questions afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody who would like to speak in support of the petition that's presented tonight? Other than the petitioner? Okay. Is there anybody here who would like to speak against, who would like to remonstrate against this particular petition? Go ahead and step forward.
I just have some questions.
This is not the time for that, ma'am. If you want to speak, you can come forward and speak, but I mean, But the commission is not going to answer questions.
I'm just concerned that it's next to
Your name
this-
and address, please.
Danielle Larimer, 2437 Auburn Way.
Thank you.
I just have concerns that it's next to the school, and I know that there's kids there in the parking lot, and I'm just wondering what the tenants, what is the target tenant that's going to be in there right next to where there's like kids playing? That's my concern.
Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to remonstrate against this particular petition? Okay. The remonstration period is closed. You now have 5 minutes of rebuttal. If you'd like to address the question that was presented, go ahead.
Sure, absolutely. So Family Promise provides housing and support services for the people in our community that struggle for stability. So the people who will live in this will be just like everybody here tonight. There's just people in our community that need attainable housing.
Okay, thank you. Public hearing portion is closed for this particular agenda item. We can now go on to questions for the petitioner and/or discussion. And I think we should go ahead and start with the waivers first. Since that's an area that's already been approved before we move on to the phase 2. We've got 3 waivers, looks like, for the parking spaces. Let's see what else we have. No, I guess it's just the 1 waiver for the parking spaces. Discussion? I think since we've got other developments in the community that have these same size parking spaces, I don't think it is a huge leap to say that this is an inappropriate request in terms of reducing the parking space size. And especially because it's not a public parking lot, the only people who would be using that most of the time would be the tenants.
I would agree with that.
Are there any questions for the petitioner before we move forward on this? If there's no further discussion, I'll take a motion on DPR 2416.
And you're looking for a motion on the waiver, correct?
On the waiver, yes. Motion, which is 2416, correct? Yes.
I'll make the motion. I move that we approve the waiver request of Avon UDO Table 6.1 to allow for a reduced off-street parking space size, since it has satisfied all the requirements for waivers under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
I'll second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Ransberg,
For,
Kaufman,
Or
Reed,
4.
Rockabrand,
4,
Spencer.
For.
motion carries. Now we can go ahead and move on to 2412, which is the phase 2 for the Family Promise. Oh, okay, apologize. We got multiple moving parts here. So now let's go to the, do I hear a motion on the approval of DPR 2416?
I'll make that motion. I'll move that we approve DPR 24-16 Family Promise Lofts on Avon Development Plan Review to allow for construction of a 5-unit townhouse building and a 2-unit townhouse building subject to the conditions listed in the staff report,
I'll second.
since it has satisfied all the requirements for a development plan review under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
Sorry, I'll second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we can take a vote.
Reed,
4.
Spencer,
For.
Rockabrand,
4,
Kaufman,
Or
–
Ransberg.
4. Now we can move on to discussion and questions for the petitioner on 2412 Family Promise Phase 2.
So do we need to add the lighting plan discussion into the motion? Or is that already included?
The lighting plan is a condition of the DPR you just approved. So
Okay.
it'll be covered by that condition, and then lighting would be addressed in the DPR phase if this goes through the
Okay.
second phase.
I do think that this is a very good natural extension and use of that property. It's an unusual space in terms of what it's surrounded by. We've got residential across the street, we've got commercial across the street and north of it. We've got the school, as was pointed out, fairly close by. This has been a residential lot that has had commercial grow up around it over the years. But considering the fact that we do need affordable housing, Family Promise is a very well-respected organization here in our community, and I am glad that they are taking the lead on helping to provide this. But I do like the idea of adding a phase 2 to this.
Yeah, it seems to be an appropriate location because it is walkable to grocery and schools and things like that as well.
There's not many walkable spaces in Avon, and this would be one of them.
I think commercial would pose more of a traffic issue there than residential, with the constant coming and going instead of just a few families coming and going.
Are there any further questions for the petitioner, either petitioner, or further discussion? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I move that we forward a favorable recommendation to the town council for ZA 2412 Family Promise Phase 2, a zoning map amendment to rezone approximately 1 acre from C2 to R5, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, since it has satisfied all the requirements for zoning map amendment under state law.
I'll second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Rockerbrand,
4.
Reed,
4.
Kaufman,
Or
Ransburg,
4,
Spencer.
Or
and the petition is approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, thank you.
We'll now move on to Whispering Pines, which, again, we have 2 separate agenda items, and I think it would be appropriate to hear them together, just like we did with the previous agenda item, just in terms of best use of time. So if we want to, we have the ZA 2411 and ZA 2401, and I will let staff decide which one they want to present first.
Thank you, President Ransburg, members of the commission. These are even more related in that they're on the exact same property rather than just being adjacent. So we have ZA 2411 and WC 2401, commonly referred to as Whispering Pines South, a request for favorable recommendations on a zoning map amendment and a modification to written commitments. The property is located at 1520 South, County Road 625 East. It's a little over 32 acres. It is currently zoned R1. And these petitions were continued from your December hearing to allow for the required introduction of the proposed zoning map amendment to the town council, which did occur on December 19th. This site is unimproved. It was rezoned in 2003 while under the jurisdiction of Hendricks County, and it was rezoned to what Hendricks County calls their RB district, which, excuse me, is a residential district. It was rezoned along with approximately 80 acres to the north and northwest, which was subsequently developed as the Whispering Pines subdivision. Written commitments were included as part of that 2003 rezoning. There were some commitments that applied to the overall property, and then there were other commitments that applied just to the north 80 acres, as it was called, and separate commitments for the south 40 acres, which were more restrictive on the number of lots, minimum lot width, setbacks, et cetera. The north 80 acres was annexed into the town of Avon in 2005, with portions of that property being zoned R2, the eastern portion, and the western portion of it being zoned R1. The south 40 acres, which is what we're talking about tonight, was annexed into the town approximately a year later and was zoned R1 at that time. The north 80 acres got platted into 4 sections of Whispering Pines between 2004 and 2007, and was developed per the plan with single-family detached homes. The majority of the south 40 acres and the portion we're talking about tonight was then sold to the Avon Community School Corporation in 2009 and has remained undeveloped since then. So the requests tonight are for a favorable recommendation on a zoning map amendment from R1 to R2 and a favorable recommendation to Town Council to terminate some conditions and modify others related to that 2003 rezoning, again, which, what's requested tonight would allow for greater number of lots, narrower lot widths and side yard setbacks, different architectural restrictions, different set of building elevations, as well as provide for larger or greater minimum square footages for the houses. So the site is outlined in turquoise here with a purple star in the middle. Whispering Pines, sections 1 through 4 are to the north and northwest. Timber Bend subdivision to the south. Bridgewater, which is still in Hendricks County, to the east. And then this large property owned by the Vapor family to the west. So you have R2 zoning immediately to the north, R1 to the northwest, R1 to the west, R1 to the south, and then Hendricks County zoning RB across 625 to the east. So here's the proposed potential site layout that's been submitted with the rezoning. There would be access. This is the intersection of 625 and 150, which as you come into Whispering Pines here, this is Whispering Pines Boulevard. It's a separated entrance with a median there. So there's 2 access points that the development would connect to here from the north. And then there would be an outlet here, access point to 625 down near the south end of the property, aligned with the existing street to the east there. So this is just a little comparison of trying to hit the most germane points of what's being requested. We have a rezoning request from R1 to R2. The minimum lot width is 90 feet in R1. If you rezone to R2, that comes down to a minimum lot width of 80 feet. The minimum lot size in R1 is 15,000 square feet. If you rezone to R2, that comes down to 12,500 square feet. But we're going to talk about the existing commitments, which actually restrict this site to larger lot widths and larger lot sizes right now. And then as a comparison, Whispering Pines to the north has a typical lot width of 85 feet and a minimum lot size of 12,500, which you can see is right in line with R2 zoning. And then if you go down to the south, Timber Bend has a minimum lot width of, or a typical lot width of 125 feet. That's the narrowest lot along the north part of Timber Bend that is directly adjacent to the subject site. And the lots there along the south line of this property have a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet. Now, what's currently required on the property we're talking about tonight, because of the commitments that went along with that 2003 rezoning, is a 100-foot minimum lot width for, let's call them the interior lots, with a 15,000 square foot lot size. And then on the perimeter along County Road 625, as well as along the south boundary with Timber Bend, a 120-foot minimum lot width and an 18,000 square foot minimum lot size. So here's the property and just kind of illustrating. So this is Whispering Pines to the north. This is a typical lot there. And then this is Timber Bend to the south. That's a typical lot there. Just kind of zooming in a little bit. You can see this is your typical lot in Whispering Pines, an 85-foot lot width. And then down here in Timber Bend, your typical lot has a 125-foot lot width. So as you're aware, state law establishes these 5 criteria when contemplating a zoning map amendment: the comprehensive plan, the current conditions and character of the structures, the most desirable use of the land, conservation of property values, and responsible development and growth. Another situation here where the future land use cluster map does not provide a specific recommendation for this site, and there's no nearby cluster recommendation to possibly extend to the site. So the comp plan indicates that the underlying zoning district denotes the desired land uses. Therefore, the best interpretation of the comp plan is that it supports the existing R1 zoning of the site. We think that the existing R1 zoning, along with the existing commitments, provides for a logical transition from the smaller lots to the north to the larger lots to the south. Given the surroundings, we do think single-family residential is the most desired use for the land. We think that conservation of property values would be best accomplished by transitioning lot sizes from north to south, as is currently required by our R1 zoning with the existing commitments. And again, we think that would, platting the site in accordance with those existing regulations would be the most responsible way to develop the property. Now, staff doesn't object to modifying some of the commitments. There's numerous commitments, as you've seen, attached to your staff report. The ones related to architectural style and the particular house exterior, the design, exterior designs, we understand with the new builder, they're going to have different designs, and that architectural styles may be a little different from 20 years ago. So we don't have objection if they were just coming in and looking to make some reasonable modifications to some of those existing commitments. But we don't see any compelling interest in reducing the lot sizes, lot widths, and side setbacks that were agreed to when the property was rezoned in 2003. So for that reason, staff recommends forwarding of unfavorable recommendations to the town council for both ZA 24-11 as well as WC 2401. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
So if I'm understanding staff's report, the staff is currently happy with the R1 and doesn't see any compelling reason why we should allow rezoning to R2. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll ask the petitioner to come forward. And I would remind the petitioner, we are addressing both WC 2401 and ZA 2411 at the same time. 15 minutes.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the Avon Plan Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. For the record, David M. Compton, Vice President of Land Acquisition, Pulte Homes of Indiana, 11595 North Meridian Street, Carmel, Indiana. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and speak on behalf of Pulte Homes. First, I want to thank Paul and the town staff for all the hard work and that they put into this petition so far. See several familiar faces in the audience, the Vapor family behind me, who I've been able to spend some quality time with, the Whispering Pines Board of Directors, and many other residents who have reached out during both of the informational sessions we have had for the public. I think it's important to understand why we're here tonight. This is part of a, best described as a swap agreement with Avon Schools. Pulte Homes put under contract, and it was actually before this board in the past, about 78 acres off of 150 South. That's actually kind of the missing puzzle piece for Avon Schools. They've desired to purchase this piece to complete their campus. A recent demographic study done by the schools has indicated that 2 parcels of land that they own, one on Dan Jones, just north of 150, that was before you in December, called Aspen Trace, which was a primary plat only, was not a rezone, and an additional parcel consisting of 32 acres that we're here about tonight called Whispering Pines would be the consideration from their side to get the Grundy parcel that's down on 150. So let's talk a little about Whispering Pines. Can we go to the first slide, please? Thanks very much. Paul's kind of already indicated where it is. As we know, down there on 100 South, part of the Whispering Pines development. Next slide, please. That was originally done in 2003 by Bruce Scolaire. Interestingly enough, the original builder was not Estridge, it was actually MI Homes. And then Estridge was the second builder. And I found out later this week that actually David Weekley built some homes in there. So there's actually been 3 builders in the 4 sections of the Whispering Pines community. Originally, it was laid out for 199 lots, okay? All the detention and districting Whispering Pines in the north area went to the pond that's in the retention area. And it's interesting to note that in 2003, you can see that there was a second entrance contemplated off of 625 in the south section that we're talking about tonight. 20 years ago, we had 120-foot wide lots on the south property line only, transitioning to 100-foot wide lots, transitioning to 85-foot wide lots on the north side of the entrance double lane boulevard coming in. Next slide, please. So let's fast forward to October of 07, because I think there was a letter to the staff that I think there's some confusion I want to address. When we looked at Beacon on October 7th, we saw the map on your left. It had mislabeled land in the area, especially to the south, as you can see, as R2 when it was really R1. Melissa in our office reached out to staff. They provided a corrected map on December 10th, which now I think shows the correct zoning, which is R1 for Timber Bend, R1 for this site, R2 in the yellow, those are 85 footers, and then R1. Because I think there's somebody that indicated, boy, Pulte wasn't telling the truth. We just went off the best information we had at the time from Beacon. So I want to make sure that we clarified that. Let's go ahead and go to the third slide, please. So this is the proposed site plan in front of you today, 71 lots. The zoning commitments have a maximum of 64. We're asking for 7 additional lots. Better watch my math there. As part of this analysis, in 20 years, let's think about what happens in our lives in 20 years. The drainage code was updated in the county. The drainage code was updated in the town of Avon, but also buyer preferences were upgraded. It's interesting, today in the town of Avon, the only other project that I could find that's rezoned for 100-foot wide lots is 38 out of 845 lots in Easton Gray. In talking to the builders that are involved in there, those lots are not under contract by anybody. So in the last 20 years, we're going to talk about a little bit here, buyer preferences have gone to smaller lots, but bigger houses. We'll continue to talk about that. So the proposed rezone is to 100 footers, which are still in advance, still bigger than Avon's R1. Avon's R1 is 90. We're proposing 100 footers on the south property line, transitioning to 80 footers over the rest of the project. Could we go to the next slide, please? Also, differences between the 03 plan and the current plan, and this doesn't show up great, I'm going to apologize. So if there's anybody online, I'll help you out a little bit here. Let's start on the north and go to this and route, and then we'll go east, south, and then west, okay? On the north end, the green area was part of the original project. This area was actually deeded to the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. This area was actually, Madam Chairman, lots in the original plan. I can't tell you, Bruce Scolaire is not here, why that was deeded. to the homeowners association, but it was. And so that impacted and create a greater size in the amenity area, lost a couple lots. As we go out along 625, out on the east side, originally the tree preservation, and it shows up in yellow. It's not a really great yellow, but it shows up in yellow. This was actually part of the lots. And Melissa Gerard's been running point on this for the Pulte team, and with Lance Farrell from Banning. And I think it was a great idea to make this actually common area. So those trees that you drive by along 625 are now in common area rather than sitting on a lot. And the same thing happened as you wrap around the south side of the project. There's a very nice tree line, and I've got some photos of it, because you really can't see timber bend from our lots. We went out and took a photo on Friday. Beautiful day, sunny, it always is in Avon in Indiana, and you cannot see through to the south. But we also put those trees in an actual common area instead of a lot. And the reason we do that is to make sure nobody comes in and cuts the trees down by accident, right? Because, ma'am, if they're not on your lot, you can't cut them down. And we've seen that happen, so we put those. And then as part of a land swap, and Mr. Vapor was explaining to me in one of our earlier visits, the area on the west side that's in green, that's with trees today, is actually part of the Vapor property. So what was in the original plan was actually deeded to the Vapors. Those trees are on their property. We're talking about some supplemental landscaping and a fence to further protect their right to farm and their privacy, because the Vapor family is one of the longest standing families within the town of Avon as far as property ownership. Let's go ahead and move on, please. So these are the new elevations that Pulte's proposing for the community. They range from 2,300 to over 3,300 square feet in size, okay? I think it's important when we look at a zoning that we look at it in totality, okay? Because it's not just the lot size, it's the size of the houses and the minimum size. Under the current zoning, anybody could take my place up here, any one of my competitors, or one in the audience tonight, and they could come in under the current zoning and build houses, ranches starting at 1,900 square feet and two-story homes starting at 2,200 square feet. I've been doing this for about 35 years. And so let's talk about the differences between a 100-foot wide lot and an 85-foot lot. It's about 15 feet less. The land development cost on that is about $15,000, okay? So under our new zoning proposal, we're going to say that the minimum lot size, and it's that ranch on the right, is 2,300 square feet. It's about 400 square feet bigger. A two-story home, which there's 5 of them on that you see, we're going to make 600 square feet bigger. To go from a 2,200 square foot home to a 2,800 square foot home, it's going to cost you about $60,000 more. So it's going to cost us $15,000 more from 85 to 100. We're going to save that much. But we're also going to give the people what they want today as home buyers. They don't want a huge lot. But an 85-foot lot is still some of the biggest we develop in the city. But we're going to give them and the neighbors a bigger minimum house size by 600 square feet. So we're going to increase what you're going to see here by $60,000 over someone else that might be standing here. Some of the other standards that are being proposed as part of the commitment modification, since we're talking about them both right now, today there can be vinyl siding in this south section of Whispering Pines. We're going to propose hardy plank siding, the cement fiber board. The new plans that you see today have multiple gables. Many of them have front porches, brick and stone water tables, as well as what we call more of a variety of architectural styles. The house in the upper right corner is described as prairie. The house in the lower left corner is known as a northern craftsman. You can kind of see the fluted columns on the front porch. There's also a Tudor there directly in the middle. And then we also do kind of a cottage style. So you see a real nice flavor and variety of architectural rather than just one straight roof plane across the top. Could I have the next page, please? A little bit about the commitments. I've talked about them already. The existing commitments, 64 lots. Lots on the south perimeter, 120, 18,000 feet. The rest were at hundreds. We're proposing hundreds and 80s. The R1 Avon is in the middle at 15,000 square feet. The original commitments were not recorded. They're missing legal and several attachments, not even signed by the landowner. So we'll continue to work through those with staff and make sure that we're able to interpret those. And that's part of the reason to ask a continuance, is to kind of clean up those discussions. Let's go ahead and go on to the next page, please. The next page talks about those existing buffers we talked about. Number one is a picture. It doesn't capture all the trees, but there's a lot of trees along 625 that we'll be saving because those will be in a landscape easement today. Number two is a better picture of those trees coming south. Number three is looking about 150 feet. I wanted to kind of stand in the living room of a house and look back to the south at Timber Bend. That is, folks, is in the winter, in the dead of winter, what you see. I can barely make out the houses to the south in that area. Go ahead, please. Some of our discussions have also included, can we go back one slide? I forgot the vapors. I want to make sure I talk. The vapor property is on the left or the west side of this. We've had the opportunity to meet 3 times, and I think there's 3 major concerns. One is drainage. They want to make sure that we don't flood out their drive coming in, and we don't flood out their property. Lance Farrell's done a preliminary drainage report, which shows that all the drainage goes to a second lake that we added from this site. Only about 4 acres out of 32 acres, and Greg, I see in the audience here tonight, is going to verify what I'm saying, but only about 4 acres go into the existing lake. 28 out of 32 acres will go into the new lake. The next thing is the vapors' privacy and right to farm. We totally respect that. We'll be putting in the declaration language that respects them as the right to farm, that there could be noise, there could be sounds. And then we've also talked about a buffer. We're discussing a privacy fence, 6 foot in height along the common property line, and then also supplementing some trees to allow them to have that privacy that was originally promised in the original zoning. I think it was a farm fence, right, originally? But we're talking a 6 foot fence now. And then the last concern, I believe, was traffic out on 625. But we want to use this time to, we've requested a meeting with the county surveyor to talk more about the drainage. Once it leaves the Whispering Pines property, it flows to the west through a dam that was probably 100 years ago, right? Originally, if I remember right. I don't want to say it wrong. So there's an old dam there that was partially repaired, but eventually it gets out there to White Lake Creek. So we're going to get a meeting with Mr. Gaston just to make sure that some commitments and some meetings that were over 20 years ago are being followed up on. And then the next page is the Whispering Pines. Had a chance to meet with their board multiple times on Teams calls and once in person. Their concerns are the impact on amenities. Also, their HOA, what a great community. They are self-managed, doing a lot of these in town. They've got a great board and great community activity. And so their documents are 18 pages long. The documents we do today are about 63 pages long. So we're going to have to get a qualified HOA attorney to look at their documents and see how we can work together. But we do believe that we will have similar architectural standards, like after you build a house, similar type fences will allowed and not be allowed. But I think it would work better if we can work it out as one community. They're also concerned about traffic off of the entrance coming off of 625 and the roundabout. Have talked a little bit about staff. That is more of a zoning question and that sort of thing. And then finally, up in front of you is part of this property is.
You've reached your time.
Okay. I guess I'll handle it in rebuttal. So
Okay.
I'm sorry. Well, thank you. Probably put too much down, but we'll address any questions you've got or in rebuttal. But thanks very much.
Okay. We'll start probably with the easier one. Is there anybody here who would like to speak in support of this proposal this evening? Okay. If you can come forward and state your name and address.
I am Mike Sullivan, Assistant Superintendent of Avon Community Schools. My address is 305 Fairfax Way, Zionsville, Indiana. I am not here to talk about zoning. Rather, I'm here to read a statement of interest of the land swap between Pulte and Avon schools. So since 2021, Avon Community School System has been committed to a strategic expansion process to ensure that our schools remain well-equipped to accommodate the growing student population while maintaining equitable educational experiences across all our schools. This expansion has included a systematic renovation and additions to facilities, all of which have been completed while lowering our tax rate, underscoring our commitment to responsible and fiscal management. We're projected to see a continued growth at our secondary schools, including Avon High School. The land that is west of Avon High Schools offers greater potential for serving the district's long-term needs, especially given its strategic location and the anticipated growth patterns in our community. Once this property is developed, Avon High School will be landlocked, but there'll be sufficient acreage on that parcel to accommodate growth in the high school programs and facilities, as well as a future elementary if enrollment dictates. We greatly appreciate the towns of Avon's partnership and support in its important initiative for our community. We are confident that this land exchange will benefit not only Avon Community Schools, but also the broader Avon community by ensuring the district's future growth and success.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who would like to step forward in support of this petition? Okay, we'll move on to people who would like to remonstrate against this petition. I would remind you that you have a total of 10 minutes. We are going to limit the time per person to 2 minutes. I would ask that you be aware of what others have said so that we get as much of a variety of opinions as opposed to hearing 4 or 5 people saying all the same thing. Do we have people that have signed up to?
Can I ask a question about what you said, though? If you're combining the two, the proposer had 15 minutes, do we not get the 15 minutes since we're covering 2 things?
Any objection to that? Okay, 15 minutes. Okay. So you have, but again, if someone else has said what you've already said, or someone else has said what you want to say, stay seated. We want to get as much of a variety of opinions as possible here. So we have people who have signed up, Linda?
First person is Kurt Vapor.
Ms. Albright, could I switch with Libby? She'd like to go.
Okay. Libby Whipple.
And please remember to state your name and your address. And our timekeeper will be letting you know.
My name is Libby Whipple, 1824 Water Oak Way, Avon. I've lived in Timber Bend since 1999. I want to thank the Avon staff for their research and their recommendation to deny this petition. I want to point out we are not opposed to the land swap between the school district and Pulte Homes. Because of time constraints, I would simply like to ask my neighbors in the room who also agree with the staff recommendation to please stand. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kurt Vapor. I live at 4927 Silver Bell Drive in Plainfield. We own the 45 acres to the west side of the property. And we provided a handout that I hope maybe you all can reference as I go through here, because I will refer to it. Our primary purposes are to, with these comments, are to retain privacy and the character of a historic farm, and to gain protection from loss and liability attendant to wastewater. The first 3 pages of that handout describe our farm, and I'll do so quickly. It's 45 acres, 35 acres are classified forest. It's been in our family since 1884. Our daughter and her family are in residence now. There's a large ravine through it that will drain all of Whispering Pines wastewater to White Lick Creek. It's the home place of Indiana's soybean pioneer, Adrian Parsons, who Avon honored with a bronze plaque at the cul-de-sac on 625 East. It's in the National Register of Historic Places. And currently on that farm are 1 farmhouse, 8 original outbuildings, chickens, goats, dogs, and cats. Our first concern, and Dave mentioned the first 2 of these, we'd like to have a good landscape transition to separate our farm from residential homes. Since he talked about that in our conversations, I won't say any more on that at this time. The next concern is our liability attendant to wastewater. And on that handout, this is covered on pages 5, 6, and 7. But the background here is we had a legal agreement with the original developer, Bruce Sclair.
That is 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, I thought Libby gave me her time to.
It's just 2 minutes per person.
Oh, well, so can I get the rest of our concerns entered into the public record, the ones we did on the handout?
Sure.
We have it.
You provided it to us and we'll
We
be
all do have a
looking at
copy
this.
of that.
So
Yeah.
thank you. This is very well done, by the way. So. Okay, next person who was signed up.
Betty Harrington.
Betty Harrington, 2141 Laurel Leaf Lane in Timber Bend. We also agree with staff's recommendation, and we would just ask that you hold this developer to the commitments that were previously made when this was rezoned and it was platted. We think that the staff has done its research, and what it is requesting will preserve our land values. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next.
Joe Huffsaver.
Joe Hoffbauer, 1564 Clare Ridge Court. So our backyard is going to be facing across 625 to the new development. Here at the first meeting, I see if it checks all the boxes, there's not a whole lot we're going to say to change any of your minds. However, when I sit here tonight and I hear about the R1, the R2, I'm a little concerned because we like that tree line that goes down 625, which is similar to Whispering Pines up north. So we don't want to lose that tree line. However, the impression that I got was if they don't go R2, that tree line is subject to those people cutting it down. So that doesn't sit too well with us because we don't really want to see them as much as we don't think they want to see us. Then also another comment, every house they had up there was a 2-car garage. Who buys a 2-car garage anymore? That's all I got.
Next.
Michelle Logan.
Is it all right if I speak for her? She wrote her name down, and that's mine. I'm her husband.
You can go ahead and state your name.
Thank you, Nathan Logan, 1764 Water Oak Way. I think that a couple of things to also consider about is that in preserving the value of the homes, I think building trendy style homes tends to be a limiting factor. I think there's a lot of research that shows when a fad cools, resale values drop. I don't think the Chip and Joanna Gaines style homes that they're proposing fit in with the area. And I think I urge the committee to think about what that's going to look like 10 years from now. Maybe kind of like the Michael Graves building on the north side, fans there. Also, brick is timeless and it's valued versus hardy plank. I think hardy plank adds some value over vinyl and it has a decent ROI, but it's still considered a value and budget choice versus brick. I think also noise pollution is an issue. I believe with doing the math on this, you're looking at maybe between 200 to 300 new neighbors just behind us in the backyard. So I think that's not going to help our value. I also believe their neighborhood won't have any amenities comparable to Whispering Pines or to Bridgewater to the east. So I kind of wonder how that's going to sit well with their home buyers or other people that create pedestrian traffic wandering around in those areas. So at the end of the day, I think that it's also a thing to consider is that Pulte is a publicly traded company. Their best interests are not with the town of Avon. The gentleman that spoke here lives in Carmel, and their job is to maximize shareholder wealth, not really look out for the town of Avon or its citizens or its next door neighbors. So that's all I have to say.
If we could please keep responses to, okay, go ahead.
Ken Owen.
Hello and thank you. I'm Ken Owen, 6145 White Alder Court in Avon, Timber Bend. Lived there 24 years. I guess I would focus on the word density. And I'm a Pulte shareholder. I have great respect for the company and what they do. But I respect the commission's decision with the R1. I think in Avon, we need to aim higher. And like Carmel has in some other communities, this is a beautiful piece of land. And I think it can be home to bigger homes and bigger lots. And so I would say light pollution, I would add to the issues in the neighborhood as you keep adding and adding and adding. And no, I would just say I'm all for the land swap, but I think the R1 designation is appropriate.
Most of you are well behaved.
Danielle Larimer.
Can you say that again?
Danielle Larimer.
Danielle Larimer, 2437 Auburn Way. I don't know how you're listening to anything this guy says if he says that homeowners want to have smaller lots. I have never once in my life thought, I wish my front door was closer to the street or my living room window was closer to my neighbors. That is absolutely ridiculous, and I don't even know how he said that out loud. That's it.
Next.
Jeremy Bennett.
Pass, okay, next.
Patrick Larimer.
How much time do we have left?
We have 6 minutes.
Okay, next. Means we have time for, if you use all your time, 3 more people. Go ahead.
Patrick Lermer, 2437 Auburn Way. I don't even live in Timber Bend, but it's a beautiful neighborhood. All the houses are unique. I run through it all the time. I love that neighborhood. The thought of putting this cookie cutter neighborhood inside of it is really, you know, in the smaller houses and lots, you really just kind of, they're making money off the fact that Timber Bend's so beautiful. And they're going to sell these lots for a ton because it's a beautiful property that they're butted up against. And evidently they're going to hurt the property value of Timber Bend doing this. And the smaller the lots, the worse it's going to be.
Okay, I'm going to just say this one more time. Please do not applaud. I've given you an option. We're all adults. Go ahead.
Ashley Jackson. Jason Westfall.
Hi, I'm Jason Westfall, live at 1388 Arborvitae Court. I've been the president of the Homeowners Association at Whispering Pines for quite a while in the past, so I'm pretty familiar with the history of the neighborhood. I'll say with this new property going in, definitely with the, times change, the roundabout that's there, coming in with the entrances to a new community is going to be incredible safety concern for everyone that's there. Also huge concerns with the lack of amenities within that neighborhood. I can tell you that our amenities at Whispering Pines cannot in any way, shape, or form accommodate another neighborhood going on top of it. We're already exploding in our pool area. There just isn't room for more people. And it goes back to the density question. There's just, enough's enough. There's just too many people compressed in one small space. I'd love to keep the land the way that it is.
Thank you.
Craig Stevens.
Craig Stevens, 2003 Water Oak Way, Avon, Indiana. I appreciated the representative for Pulte coming and showing the slides, particularly because I think he helped prove our point. He spent a lot of time showing slides of tree lines and even fences that they're going to put up so that you can't see into Timber Bend. That's kind of telling us that whatever they're building, we're not going to want to see. Like, let's make sure that, look, we can't see you, so you can't see us. If I'm building something that I'm proud of, I would think people would want to see it. We don't. It's not welcome. It's not wanted. I think the outpouring of support against this proves that while Pulte may say that this is what the people want, the people of Avon are telling you different. Thank you.
Thank you. Next,
Nobody else has signed up.
how much time do we have left?
We got roughly 2 minutes.
If there's somebody else who'd like to come and speak, address something that's not been said, you have 2 minutes and counting. If anyone would like to take advantage. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
You have 2 minutes.
2 more.
So we made the original agreement with Bruce Sclair. We gave a section of property and an easement for the drain pipe that comes out of the Whispering Pines Pond, and that goes to White Lick Creek. And we also did an improvement on our dam that's downstream. So that got done very well. But unfortunately, then Mr. Sclair went bankrupt, and the second part of the agreement never got done, and that was, our legal agreement says he was to work with Hendricks County or the HOA to take responsibility for maintenance of this drain. And that's never been done, and that's what we're after, because this is very expensive drainage infrastructure, and we don't feel like we should be responsible for it. So we have another smaller drainage concern about our lane, which we think landscaping of new housing, new homes may flood our lane. It's never flooded so far, but we're concerned about that. And then the last concern is just about traffic congestion. There's an exit onto 625 East out of this proposed subdivision, and I don't believe its distance from our lane meets NDOT standards. Now, I don't know if Avon follows NDOT standards, but I think when two cars would turn into each other onto that road, it could be maybe hazardous. And then the last thing I was going to mention is just the traffic on 625 East, where 625 East has about 4 pinch points. And I drive out there very often to see my grandkids. And I can tell you there are certain times of the day where 625 East has a couple intersections, particularly 100 South and 300 South, where there's a problem, and I believe that should be addressed. So thank you very much for the added 2 minutes.
Perfect timing.
Yep, perfect.
Would the petitioner like to come forward and rebut the comments? And I think because we have doubled everyone else's time, we'll go ahead and give you 10 minutes instead of 5.
I don't think I need 10 minutes, but I'll just provide some clarifications. We will be asking for a continuance. The team back here, each of us have taken notes from all the different speakers, and I do appreciate all the interest in the project tonight. Obviously, we've got some work to do, and we understand that. I want to address a couple questions. First, again, thank Mr. Vapor. We'll continue to work with him on buffering. Buffering isn't necessary to hide a community. It's about respect of what's already there. Someone said we were not proud of what we do. We're absolutely proud of the product that we build. But the Vapors are there. They have a 45-acre farm operation. They want to be protected from anybody who builds here, not just Pulte. We'll continue to work. We're setting up the meeting on the drainage, the Whispering Pines. Lance was lucky enough to have worked on this when the project originally went through. Lance, you're that old. So you'll be continuing to provide drainage analysis. He's done a preliminary study where we're taking water off of the Vapor property and taking it to that pond rather than dumping any more water on that. But we'll continue to meet not only with the county, but I committed to the Vapor family for Lance and I to sit down with him during this period and work with them. A couple other things that were brought up that I just want to clarify. I'll make sure the facts are correct. Pulte will commit to keep the tree line along 625. Somebody said that we would tear it out. That's not factual nor correct. We're going to put that in a common area so that Pulte can't tear it out and the neighbors in the future can't tear that out. Secondly, somebody said, well, you've only got 2-car garages. That's also not true. These are 2-car garage doors, but the most common thing done today is what's called a tandem garage, where there's additional space behind the 2-car garage. That's where the lawnmowers go. That's where additional workshops go. That's where the bikes go and other things, yard equipment, snow blowers, etc. What's great about that is we don't have the 3 garage doors facing the street. You only have one, but you've got additional storage so that you can still park 2 cars in the garage. So we'll submit Linda and Paul some additional information on that, on the garage sizes, so that's better understood for the planning staff. I apologize on our part for any miscommunication. Amenities, yes, we've been in discussions with the current board in regards to possibly joining the amenity center. It's not a requirement. With lots of these this big, people often put in their own swimming pools. If you drive through Whispering Pines, there's many homes in there. Their lots are 12,500, remember, in size, that have their own swimming pool also. Yes, we are a publicly traded company. Pulte's been around for 75 years. Bill Pulte started it in Detroit, Michigan. We're very proud of that. We've been in Indianapolis for over 30 years. I grew up here. I live in Fishers, not Carmel. Our office is in Carmel, but we've been in Indianapolis for over approximately 30 years. So we're committed, in summary, as we have at Brookstone and other communities. This isn't my first time in front of many of you on the Plan Commission. We're committed to meet with the neighbors behind us. We're committed to continue to work with staff to come up with the best project possible. We look forward to seeing you in the next 30 days. But if you have any questions tonight, myself and my team are available for questions, ma'am.
Did I understand that you are also requesting a continuance?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Okay. And this would be your first request?
Yes, ma'am.
And you understand this would be your request of right?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
any future requests for continuances would require the approval of the board?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Do we want to have any discussion of this, or would we? I think it would probably, since they're going to be coming back with, I'm assuming, some changes, discussion now would be not really relevant, is kind of what I would
Well,
think.
unless we have feedback
Yeah,
that we might want to give them,
Yeah.
so when they come back, they've
correct, yeah.
accommodated that, so if there's anything like that.
Okay, you want to pull your microphone down? Thank you. So let's give some feedback to the petitioner.
Do you have any?
I do appreciate that you are being proactive with your with the neighbors, especially with the Vapor family, and with the pre-existing, and with the HOAs, and that you're cognitive of the concerns that they have. It's always good to see someone come in and try and work with the community they're wanting to develop in.
I have nothing for today.
Thank you for answering the questions that have been passed on your way this evening. You've been very good about kind of a one-to-one on that, so.
Thank
very
you.
well appreciated.
Thank you, sir.
If there's no further discussion, then I suggest we, Mr. Taylor, what would be the procedure for granting the motion? Okay. Okay. But this is a request for continuance that is theirs by right, so we cannot deny it. Okay, let's take I'll hear a motion on the petitioner's request for a 30-day continuance.
Yes, please.
Okay.
One other question on that, Mr. Taylor. Will these both come in under the same Will we need to make separate motions since this is a two-part, or how would we do that?
You can make one motion.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and make that motion then that we continue both VA 24-11 and WC 24-01 to the February 2025 meeting of the Avon Plan Commission.
Second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Spencer,
4.
Rockerbrand,
4.
Reed,
4.
Kaufman,
4.
Ransberg,
4. Motion carries, and this agenda item is moved to the February 24th meeting.
At
Thank you for your
6:30 p.m.
consideration.
Thank you.
There will not be new notice. It'll be February 24th at 6:30.
We are going to go ahead and take a short recess, and we'll see you all back in 5 minutes. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, let's see. We're moving on to the next agenda item, which is Easton Gray amenity area. This is, we're now into new business, DPR 2418. Staff can present us with their report.
Thank you again, President Ransberg and members of the commission. DPR 2418, a request for development plan review approval for an amenity center. Address on Foxley Park Lane, which you wouldn't probably see if you drove out there because the subdivision is under construction, formerly addressed off of County Road 75 North. This is generally southeast of the intersection of 75 North and 500 West. It's the future common area B of the Haven at Easton Gray Section 1. It's a little over 3.5 acres. It is zoned as a planned unit development. That is the Easton Gray planned unit development, which rezoned close to 500 acres a couple of years ago. So this property is essentially unimproved, although there's some, at least dirt work certainly going on out there. And again, this is the Haven at Easton Gray, also known as Area F in the Easton Gray PUD. Plat approval was granted in 2023. So this request would allow for construction of an amenity center for the Haven at Easton Gray area, which would include approximately 9,000 square foot clubhouse building, a couple of in-ground swimming pools, outdoor game course, off-street parking and landscaping. The site is here. Again, I referenced County Road 75 North and County Road 500. I said west, I should have said east, my apologies. The development would be right in here. This whole area is part of the Havens at Easton Gray, or the Haven. And this is the approximate area of the proposed amenity center. Here's a site plan. North is at the top. Here's the parking lot, clubhouse building, outdoor pools, game courts down here. That might be shuffleboard. These are pickleball and tennis. And then here's, oh, I thought we had a landscaping plan there. There's the landscaping plan. Lots of landscaping. Looks like it will be an attractive development. The one thing we did note in our secondary review is that there should be landscaping up here around the parking lot as required by the UDO and not amended by the Easton Gray PUD to screen the perimeter of the parking lot. So our recommendation would have a condition for a revised landscape plan. I'm not going to spend much time on these building elevations. The petitioner has a presentation which has much prettier renderings of these buildings to show you what they look like. But suffice to say, we do think they meet the standard of the UDO, that they be basically comprised of the best of designs in the neighborhood. So we do think those would be sufficient. Amenity centers have regulations in UDO 7.17C, but a site that's zoned as a PUD, if it includes alternate standards, those supersede the UDO. So the UDO has certain standards of what would have to be required in an amenity center. But because the PUD ordinance for Easton Gray specifically called out what would be in the amenity center here, and it said a community building with fitness facilities and gathering rooms, full-size pool, tennis and pickleball courts, and other amenities appropriate for the neighborhood demographic, which this, I believe, is an age-restricted 55 and up community, that those would be provided. We do find that the plans do meet those requirements laid out in the Easton Gray PUD ordinance. As I mentioned, it didn't include alternative standards for parking lot landscaping, so we do think we just do need to add a little bit of landscaping there around the parking lot. So therefore, we are recommending approval of DPR 2418, which is not requesting any waivers, subject to the 5 conditions in the staff report, basically standard conditions with the addition of number 2 that I mentioned, a revised landscape plan to be submitted prior to permitting. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So you said, and I think you confirmed, this is in this is in the area that is the 55 plus community, part of Easton Gray?
Yes, I believe that is correct. Yes.
Which would explain the pickleball courts.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids.
Are
that play
there?
pickleball,
Okay.
so It's very popular.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? If not, we'll have the
Actually,
petitioner.
I've got one question. Is this going in actually, is this concurrent with the housing or is this actually going in before the houses are built? I'm just kind of curious about that.
That's probably a better question for the petitioner. I mean, I know that there's a lot of dirt moving around up there, so whether or not they're going to put this in advance of any houses, I don't know if we have that information, but petitioner might be able to shed some light on that.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff? Okay, petitioner can come forward.
Good evening, Steve Brehub, Banning Engineering, representing the petitioner, Lennar Homes. Paul did a good job presenting this. The reason that we're here this evening, the amenity area was not designed as part of the original subdivision approval. There was space planned for it, but the building hadn't been designed, the parking hadn't been designed, the pickleball courts, and as you can see, there was a commitment in the PUD that the amenity area would contain all these things. So we're just catching up now and bringing the plan forward for the amenity area. The intent is, Paul had said there's a lot of dirt moving going on out there. Actually, all the dirt moving is pretty much done. All the roads are in, the water sewer storm curb paving, all of that's completed. We're anticipating starting home construction here this spring, and the amenity area will go in at the same time. So we'd like to have the amenity area completed about the time that homes are being completed. Obviously, it's an attraction and it's kind of a marketing tool as well. So that is the intent. If you can flip through these, Paul, and go to the building elevations, really that's the only thing I wanted to show. It's an all brick building. Steep pitched roof, so it's an attractive building. The landscape concerns, obviously we'll get the landscape plan revised and add the required landscaping, meeting the ordinance around the parking lot area in the front. With that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody here who would like to speak in support of this agenda item? Other than petitioners? Thank you. Is there anybody here who would like to speak in support of this agenda item? Of this petition? Is there anybody here who would like to speak against this petition? Does the petitioner want to rebut the complete lack of interest in your?
I have nothing more to add.
Okay. Discussion?
So there are no waivers associated with this, so is this a ministerial approval then?
Correct. We don't have to address any waivers, and this is ministerial. Thank you for bringing that up. So if it meets the requirements of the ordinances, and we agree that it meets the requirements of the ordinances, then we must approve. I'm just sitting here wondering if I should take a pickleball, but
It's a lot of fun. You should.
It's a lot.
any further discussion about this petition, about this agenda item?
Do not.
Okay. Then someone would like to make a motion?
I move that we approve DPR 24-18 Haven and Eastern Gray Amenity Center, a development plan review to allow for an amenity center, including a clubhouse, pools, and game courts, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, since it has satisfied all the requirements for a development plan review under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
Do we hear a second? Having heard a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Reed.
4.
Spencer.
4.
Rockabran.
4.
Ransberg. Kaufman.
DPR 2418 has been approved. Moving on to DPR 2418 Havens Amenity Staff Report. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. Moving on to MAP 2417 Laurel Heights. This is a primary plat.
Thank you, commissioners. Laurel Heights is located on the far west end of Avon. It is addressed at 4252 and 4296 East Main Street. 29, almost 30 acres that currently zoned R3. This went through Plan Commission a few months ago and has since been approved by Town Council to be zoned R3 for the single-family development, which the case is there. It was approved by Town Council on December 5th. The property is currently going through a two-step super voluntary annexation process as well, which will be finalized in March, I believe. They are asking for preliminary plat approval for 42 detached lots, single-family detached lots, and then there is one waiver, and that is the waiver of the requirement to connect to an existing cul-de-sac street to the west, which is known as Pecan Drive. This is the subject site. The subdivision to the west here is within the town of Danville. And Pecan Drive is here, which is what we'll be talking about. The site is currently improved with 2 homes. So there's one down here on its own lot, and then the primary lot is up here. There's a house and other outbuildings up to the north. The plat will have, those 2 lots will be located on 2 lots within the plat, and then it will be platted for 40 new single-family detached homes. I want to address the waiver request, which is the lack of connection to the cul-de-sac to the west. Typically, we require, if a street stubs up to a property, that we connect, or the new development connect to it. In this case, we found that the connection or a lack of connection was preferable because that cul-de-sac is within the town of Danville, and this would be within Avon, and jurisdictional, when does one jurisdiction stop and the other start for street maintenance and snow maintenance and that sort of thing. It's preferable to our street staff that they be separated, and that this particular subdivision with the number of lots that it has did not need more than one access point. The 4 Oaks subdivision to the west, I'll just show you the cul-de-sac here. Most times when we have streets connect, they are stub streets, meaning they're just the straight stub built without a cul-de-sac. And this street was built as a cul-de-sac with an opportunity to connect. It should Danville have annexed this parcel, but Danville did not. But there's no safety concerns in that cul-de-sac in Danville because it was built as a properly sized cul-de-sac that trash trucks, buses, and most importantly, fire trucks can get around. So it is not a stub street as you would typically see. So we don't think the connection is as necessary as we would typically see in our connections throughout Avon. So the R3 standards require a 6,000 square foot lot and a 60-foot wide lot. They have a zoning commitment that they agreed to for 70-foot wide lots, which the plat does meet. Sidewalks would be sidewalks would be developed throughout the internal street, which is a loop road, and then an asphalt path is required along Main Street, which is shown. They required 10% open space, and they're proposing 19.7. This is generally what it's going to look like. Again, lot 1 down here is an existing home. Lot 2 up here will be the main homestead of the original property. That will connect and have frontage on the new loop road. There is a driveway currently now that comes down along the side of this property, and that will no longer be the access for this home back here. It will actually connect to the road. The waiver findings, the criteria for the waiver are in your staff report. We do believe that the alternative will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare because that cul-de-sac was constructed to full cul-de-sac style standards. It is not a stub street as we know it in the ordinance. The alternate that's shown would not contradict the design standards of the subdivision regulations because the loop street is designed to meet current Avon standards and a second access is not required. We do think it's conditions specific to this property because it is butting up against another jurisdiction, and that's not typically the case with most of the subdivisions you see. And finally, criteria 4, that the alternative enhances the proposed development. The petitioner indicated it would lessen the amount of pavement, and that is true, and create more green space along that property line adjacent to 4 Oaks subdivision. So staff is recommending approval of both the waiver and the plat as proposed, subject to the standard 4 conditions that we include in all preliminary plats. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
So just as a reminder, because this plat approval asks for a waiver, we need to address the issue of the waiver first before we can move on to approval of the plat itself. Now, you mentioned a couple different reasons why it would be appropriate to not require a stub street connection. One of them has to do with jurisdiction, but there are other logistical reasons that it makes sense. Does the town of Avon enter into agreements with Danville, Brownsburg, Plainfield in order to connect substreets? Is that a standard thing, or is that just generally not considered a good idea?
We don't prohibit connections. And we have one going on in Silver Springs, as a matter of fact. But generally, we have agreements with the other jurisdictions on our major roads, our connectors and our arterials of where plowing starts and stops. And if you have some that comes in here and touches, then we'll get that snow plowing and you get that down here. Subdivision streets, we don't have that kind of, I guess, discussions with the adjacent subdivisions. And just in this case, we didn't think that it was necessary. And so there was no point in disrupting the other subdivision and having a jurisdictional boundary at their subdivision.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Have the petitioner come forward. And right now we are discussing the waiver, so.
Okay. Thank you. For the record, Taylor Navarre, address is 11555 North Meridian Street in Carmel. I'm with Lennar Homes. I just want to thank Linda and staff for the presentation. I think everything was covered very well. And I want to thank the town as well for working with Lennar and their assistance and support throughout this process. I don't have anything else to add. I think, like I said, Linda covered everything, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, I don't think, I mean, this is one agenda item, but we also have to address the waiver. So public input should wait until after we go to the second, to the approval itself?
No, it should be now.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be down. They could comment on any aspect of the case, just that your first motion needs to be on the waiver, but you
Right.
can hear it all.
Okay, okay. Is there anybody who would like to speak as to the waiver portion of this agenda item? Okay, thank you. Just made my life a lot easier. So, okay, so, or to any, well, we haven't heard from the petitioner on the other part of it. So following your brain here. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and come forward and we'll work through the rest of your,
Yeah, thank you. Again, for the record, Taylor Navarre with Lennar Homes, 11555 North Meridian Street, North Carmel. Here to answer any questions you may have on the plat. Thank you all for the consideration.
Okay. Is there anybody who would like to speak either for or against the Laurel Heights preliminary plat petition? Okay, having nobody stepped forward, that makes it even easier. Discussion.
I think the staff report made sense with the different jurisdictions, make it clear where the separation is. And I like that the other property is designed as a cul-de-sac, so.
I do too. I do too. I mean, I agree with, normally you would want the stub streets to connect neighborhoods, but it doesn't make sense in this case, because it really would be disruptive of the other neighborhoods since it was designed as a cul-de-sac.
It's a question for staff. What is the threshold for requiring a second connection?
50 lots.
Okay.
And this is, petitioner's been in front of us before, and I know that there's been some adjustments made, and of course, we always appreciate when people who want to do business in our town actually talk to our town, so. Any further discussion, questions for the petitioner or staff about this agenda item? If not, we'll entertain a motion. First, we need to have a motion on the waiver.
I move that we approve the waiver of design standards of UDO 721 E3A to waive the requirement to connect to an existing stub street since it has satisfied all the requirements for waivers under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
I'll second.
Having had a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Kaufman.
4.
Reed.
4.
Spencer.
4.
Rockerbrand.
4.
And Ransburg.
4. Waiver has been approved. We now move on to the approval of the preliminary plat, MAP 2417. Do we hear a motion?
I move that we approve MAP P 24-17 Laurel Heights, a major subdivision preliminary plat to divide 29.45 acres into 42 single-family detached lots, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, since it has satisfied all the requirements for a major subdivision preliminary plat under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
Having had a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Reed.
4.
Spencer. 4. Kaufman.
4.
Ransburg.
4.
Rockerbrand.
4.
Motion carries, and the plat is approved. Thank you. Okay, moving on. 2 more to go. Moving on to DPR 2419, Cava at Rockville Station.
Thank you again, Commissioners. DPR 2419 is a request for approval of a development plan review. Is located at 9257 East US Highway 36. Just a couple administrative things to point out before we get into the heart of this. One, my apologies. Your staff report indicated the wrong applicant. The applicant is Paragon Realty LLC. more importantly, the address changed. What we sent out in the legal notice, well, what the petitioner sent out in the legal notice and what we advertised in the newspaper indicated 9255 East US Highway 36, as that is the address that the town had assigned to this lot when it was platted many years ago. But it was brought to our attention that another occupant of a building behind this property has been using that address. So in order to eliminate future confusion there, the town has changed the address assigned to this parcel to 9257 East US Highway 36.
Does this impact the notice requirements?
We don't think it's a significant issue that would mislead anyone from the public as far as determining what property was associated, since this is the address that the town had assigned to it in our records. And if they were interested, they would have been able to find out more information. So we don't think there's a defect in the notice.
Mr. Taylor, would you agree with that? Okay.
The second issue is that we initially inadvertently interpreted the zoning map, misread the zoning map to believe that this was zone C2, when in fact it is zone C3. Again, with the legal notice that was advertised and mailed out, it was advertised as being zone C2 when it is in fact C3. That's also an issue that we don't believe would render the legal notice to be defective. The use that's proposed of a restaurant use is permitted in both of those districts. The C3 district only allows drive-throughs by a grant of special exception. But that's not something you're hearing today, but that was addressed by the BZA. But drive-throughs are also only permitted in Tier 1 by special exception. So my apologies, that's not even part of the notice that went out for the DPR, but that was an issue that was addressed by the BZA. So again, 9257 East US Highway 36, this is Lot 2 in Rockville Crossing. It's a 1 acre outlot in the Rockville Crossing subdivision. So at the top here, you've got US 36 going east and west, and then over here you've got Avon Village Parkway running north-south. Lot 1 has a multi-tenant commercial building on it. It's got yachts on one end, sideline pub on the other end, a couple other restaurants, donut shop, personal service establishments in between. And this is all developed as parking out here, both the remainder of Lot 1, all of this, and then what is Lot 2 is currently improved with parking. Here's an aerial view of it. Again, 36 here, Avon Village Parkway here. This is Lot 1 here with the multi-tenant building, and here's Lot 2 that we're looking at today. And there's the general location of where this proposed building would go. Just a couple photos. That's just looking west on US 36, towards Avon Village Parkway. So the property is over here on the left side. This is just looking south along Avon Village Parkway from 36. So the subject site, Lot 2, is basically in this area, and you have the multi-tenant building on Lot 1 in the background. That's just a Google Street View image from US 36. So the proposed development is going to go here in the foreground, basically at the northwest corner. And again, you can see the multi-tenant building in the back. Again, the site is zone C3. Restaurant is a permitted use in C3. It was rezoned in 2005. The adjacent multi-tenant building on Lot 1 was built shortly after that. Lot 2 was always, as I'm pretty sure, always intended to be developed with another use. But back in the mid-2000s, when the multi-tenant building on Lot 1 was being developed, there were probably more restaurants that went in than may have been initially anticipated. And there was a stricter off-street parking requirement for restaurants in the zoning ordinance at that time. So in order to meet the parking standard at that time, Lot 2 was developed as additional parking lot, and it currently has 120 spaces on Lot 2. So what's proposed now is a about a 2,500 square foot restaurant building with a drive-through lane and pickup window, and retaining 58 of the current off-street parking spaces that are already in existence. So here's a look at the site plan. Again, here's the multi-tenant building down here, just to orient you. Here's the other parking on lot 1. This is the proposed Cava restaurant. Access would be through lot 1, coming in off of Avon Village Parkway. And then, of course, people could choose to park anywhere. There's a agreement. I think the petitioner will tell you they're working on an agreement to make sure that in the future that parking would be shared between the two lots, although I don't think they intend to sell this at this time. But at any rate, vehicular access coming in here, the drive-through lane would be here, and the pickup window would be around here on the east side. When this went through the Board of Zoning Appeals for its special exception for the drive-through, because they don't anticipate putting any menu board or anything to order on site. This is just a pickup window for basically online advance orders. The BZA did put a condition on the special exception approval that if they were to come back and want to make provision for on-site ordering, whether through a speaker board or through somebody standing out there taking orders, that they would have to go back to the BZA for further approval. So there are the required pedestrian connections to the sidewalk here along 36, as well as over here on Avon Village Parkway. There's the landscape plan. There's plenty of landscaping around the building. We do feel like that meets the ordinance, but another situation on secondary review, we realized that they appear to be deficient of landscaping on the perimeter here that should be updated with this new development. So we do have a condition on our approval that a revised landscape plan be submitted. Here's the building elevations. This is the front of the building facing US 36. That's the back of the building facing south. Here you have the east and west elevations. That would be the east side with the pickup window, and then here's the west side. There's a little bit better views of what that will actually look like. We did ask for a few revisions to meet the architectural standards in the ordinance, and we do find that those architectural standards would now be met. Again, as I mentioned, drive-through is a special exception use, and the BZA granted that special exception last week. And we do also find that the drive-through would be compliant with the US 36 overlay requirement that prohibits the drive-through components basically from being between the building and US 36. So they need to be to the side or rear. And with that drive-through lane going around the south and east, it does meet that requirement. One of the things we needed to look at was parking, since, as I mentioned, they needed to pave this lot in the past in order to meet the parking requirement for the lot 1 multi-tenant building. So with the 58 spaces that would be retained and the 82 spaces that currently exist on lot 1, there'd be, after this development, a total of 140 spaces. The cumulative requirement for the whole development would be 117. It's 104 spaces for the multi-tenant building and 13 spaces for the proposed building. It basically, that's looking at all of it at our most strict standard of 5 spaces per 1,000 square feet, which is the standard for restaurants or taverns. Again, as I mentioned, we did find an issue that needs to be addressed with the landscape plan. We made the petitioner aware of that, and they're looking at options, and we've had some discussion about different options about how they can meet that requirement. Additionally, a lighting plan needs to be reviewed prior to permitting, so we've got that as a condition as well. The proposed use is in alignment with the recommendation of the comprehensive plan, which supports the existing commercial zoning. There are no waivers requested with this petition. Staff is requesting, or excuse me, is recommending approval of DPR 2419, subject to the 6 conditions listed in the staff report, which are standard conditions. with the addition of the request for a revised landscape plan and lighting plan to be reviewed prior to issuance of permits. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions commissioners may have.
What modifications did you request on the architectural detail?
So there was apologize, I can't show you what they submitted before, but basically trying to figure out which would be the best. So looking at the front elevation here, so the architectural standards require like roof line changes. So this was basically a flat roof edge, if you will. There's a bit of a parapet there, but that was flat kind of around the building. So the roof line changed to provide those changes there where these architectural features stick up. I believe they added something relative to repeating pattern with these columns. I mean, there may have been columns here, but I know there was something added there. And I think again, oops, sorry, on the side elevations, there was there may have been a minor change to, again, do a repeating pattern on the side elevations. Another one of the items was that the architectural standards require a minimum of 35% of the ground floor area of the front facade to consist of glazing, essentially windows or doors that, So this was a little bit deficient on the front end, so they actually brought these windows up a little higher to get over that 35% standard. And then on the side elevations, they're required to do at least 10% glazing. So I think they were already proposing to have a glass panel here, but it wasn't clear on the elevations. They made that clear. And I can't recall for sure. They may have had to add a little bit here as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But staff is happy with the accommodations.
We do believe they meet the minimum architectural standards. So yes, we are satisfied.
Any further questions for staff? If not, we'll ask the petitioner to come forward.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is William Wilson with Paragon Realty, 8700 North Street, Suite 310, Fishers, Indiana, 46038. I'm here to answer any questions that you all might have. Just one point of clarification. This is in Rockville Station, not Rockville Crossing. So just
thank you.
Wanted to make sure that was of record. We built this project back in 2006, as Paul shared with you. We've owned it, leased it, managed it for over almost 20 years now. We originally platted this lot to eventually build something on it, but over the last 20 years, we just haven't found anything that complemented the rest of the center. Tonight, I'm here with Ashton Fritz with Fritz Engineering and Patrick Krogh with Cooler Design, our architectural and engineering team, to answer any questions you might have about the design. I also understand there was some questions about landscaping, which we will definitely address. I think Ashton has been working with Paul on those. And then we probably need to get you an updated photometric plan. There's currently 22 parking lot lights on this property. In 2023, we did a complete upgrade on all the parking lot lights to LED and all the wall packs and wall lights on the strip center. So it's much brighter, but we can certainly put together a photometric design if that's required by staff. So here to answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody present who has signed up to speak against this agenda item or for this agenda item? So I'm assuming we don't need any rebuttal on this agenda item. Discussion. Actually, I do have a question for the petitioner. So this was originally created as two lots, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
And they're subject to potentially being sold individually?
We don't have any plans to sell them. This came, I believe you were at the BZA. Yeah, I thought so. I thought you said over there. I did share with the BZA members that there is a declaration, which is restrictions, easements and access. And I think did I send that to you this week? I think I emailed it to you, the final. I think I sent
I
it
don't remember seeing
a couple
it.
days ago.
Yeah,
It's being circulated now for signature, and we're going to record it. And basically, it just restricts both parties from doing certain things. It allows cross access. It allows use of utilities that are on the site. If we ever sold Lot 2 to another developer or investor, they would have to adhere to all those restrictions that are in the declaration.
So even if there was diverse ownership interest on the two lots, they would still have to function together?
That's correct. Whoever owns the retail center, which we have no plans ever to sell it. We've owned it for 20 years. It does really well. That particular lot 1 is responsible for maintaining the entire property. And then lot 2 has to share in those expenses. So for example, landscaping, snow plowing, those kinds of things. So they will have to adhere to all the standards that the town puts upon us. And they'll have to pay their fair share.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I have a question about parking on this. So I've seen this lot very full without this building there. And accessing the existing tenants are somewhat restricted on the, I guess on the west side because of this building. They've only got 6 or 8 per tenant, give or take. Are there going to be any restrictions on the new facility to prevent others from parking there, like tenant or users of the other facilities? Are they going to be able to use any spot on here, or is essentially Kava going to hold certain spots?
Kava will have 5 spots on the very north end of the building, the perimeter of the Rockville State or the US 36, that parking field. I don't have a.
That's fine. Yeah. So the northwest corner?
Yes, right there. Those will be pickup spots. So for somebody that orders online and wants to go in and pick it up versus picking it up through the pickup lane, they can park there, go in and then leave, come back out and leave. There aren't any, in Indiana, at least for me, I find the closest parking spot to where I want to go in, and that's pretty much what everybody does here. So there's no assigned parking for any of our tenants. We don't like to police that. I know a lot of tenants want that, but we just don't allow that, so.
Okay. And it meets all the codes and for square foot, the most restrictive codes for, like, if all of those tenants became restaurants? It would be
Yeah,
okay?
so actually, we looked at, when I said that it would be 108 spaces for the multi-tenant building, that was based on applying our strictest commercial parking standard, which would be for restaurants and taverns at 5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. We understand that not every space there actually technically right now has even that strict of a standard. So the actual, but I didn't have square footages of each tenant space. So what I did was took the most restrictive standard as a worst case scenario, and that would require 108 there plus 104 for the 20,800 square feet of the multi-tenant building, plus 13 for the 2,540 square foot proposed building, which gets to a total of 117. And you've got 82 existing on lot 2 plus 58 that will, 82 existing on lot 1 plus 58, which will be on this lot 2, which would total 140. So 23 more than required by ordinance in the worst case scenario right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion or further questions for petitioner or staff? If not, entertain a motion.
I move that we approve DPR 2419 Cava Mediterranean, a development plan review to allow for construction of a 2540 square foot fast casual restaurant building with parking and drive-through pickup window, subject to conditions listed in the staff report. Since it has satisfied requirements for development plan review and under state law, subject to approval of fact, or findings of fact.
I'll second.
Having heard a motion, and a second,
Rockerbrand,
4.
Reed,
4.
Kaufman,
4.
Spencer,
4.
Ransberg.
4. Petition is approved. Moving on to our last agenda item, ZA 2413 Briarwood.
Thank you again, Commission. The last case is a rezoning petition, or zoning amendment petition called Briarwood. It's located on North County Road 900. 16.65 acres, currently zoned agriculture. The site is unimproved. Any structures that were on it have been removed. The site was the subject of a previous rezoning attempt in 2022. It was titled Sycamore Preserve at the time. That was to rezone to R2 for a single-family residential development, and that was denied. The property came into the town under 2 annexations in 21 and 22. Petitioners requesting a favorable recommendation to rezone this site from agriculture to R4 residential for a 49-lot single-family residential subdivision. This is the subject property here, outlined in white. County Road 900 is a little hard to see, but it goes down here, then does its bend, and then continues on down to US 36. The site is bordered to the north by the Carolina Commons subdivision under Hendricks County jurisdiction. Austin Lakes over here to the west, also under Hendricks County jurisdiction. Prairie Manor subdivision to the south, Hendricks County jurisdiction. There are a few outlots in front of this proposed subdivision on 900, and then Eden Gate within the town of Avon is across 900. Stonehaven is a duplex development to the north on the other side of 900, also done by Dries, which is your petitioner here today. This is a current zoning map of everything within Avon. You'll see it's right in the middle there, zoned Ag, AG, and the other zoning in the area. The red down at the bottom is everything along US 36. The blue is PUD, and then you have some R2, R3, and R4, and R5 in the area. The majority of the county zoning in this area is RB, which is this development to the north and to the west. This is your comp plan recommendation for the site. It is comp plan recommendation of specialty housing. That's probably one that's unique to you that you don't see very often. The comp plan in 2017 wanted to provide housing opportunities on sites that were not single-family detached or a duplex-like development. So something that's a triplex, quad, townhome, or apartments is what basically specialty housing would incorporate into. Therefore, the higher zoning recommendation of R4 would be consistent with that recommendation, although the proposed housing, which is single-family detached, would not meet that recommendation. Staff would point out, though, that although specialty housing is shown here, the site is completely surrounded by single-family detached dwellings. So I think back in 2017, they were looking for some large parcels to show some alternative housing types within the town, and that's why this site was chosen. But probably the best proposed development for the site is most likely single-family detached dwellings to meet and match what's surrounding it. I just went over the comprehensive plan recommendation. Then we get into density. And I've listed out the density of the developments that I've just mentioned to you and where they fall. The lowest one being Prairie Manor to the south at 1.13 units an acre. And then the highest being Eden Gate, which is the one directly across 900 at 3.95 units an acre. The proposed density here is 2.97 units per acre. The petitioner has offered some proposed commitments, and those are laid out here. These were not included in your original staff report, so you're seeing these new dedication along 900, which would be standard, a maximum of 49 lots, and that hits that spot of 50 lots being where a second entrance is required. That the site would only have detached single-family development, then minimum lot size, minimum lot width, and then minimum square foot of living area. Staff's main concern with this development would be the intersection of the proposed new street with County Road 900. Our ordinance requires a 300-foot separation between intersecting street accesses to the main road. And as proposed, the new street would only have 200 feet of separation. And that is, let me show you where that is. So the new road would come off right up in this area here. And then Eden Gate comes in right here. And that is 200 feet of separation between the two. The site is challenged in that these are the only spots that it has access to 900. So providing access within the subject site anywhere further away than 200 feet is not possible without acquiring more property. So the petitioner has potentially proposed a right-in, right-out situation for their access, which then only requires 200 foot of separation. So they would meet the town requirements for the separation if they do a right-in, right-out. The town, when a right-in, right-out is proposed, we, I guess in the words of our DPW director, we take it seriously and we require the installation of a median in the middle of 900 so people can't turn into a right-in, right-out situation when they're not supposed to. So people would be forced to only go right in, right out. You wouldn't be able to make that left turn. Our staff has concerns with that because I think right in, right out entrances have their place, and it's typically for a secondary entrance point, but not to be the only entrance point into a subdivision. And then it gets down to being less of a inconvenience for the residents, but it becomes a safety issue where when people come out of the subdivision, they try to make a U-turn in a mid-block location, or they try to turn around in someone's driveway, and that's not a situation we want to promote along 900. Staff believes that development of this site with this number of units shouldn't be considered until more land can be acquired along 900, and that the entrance could line up with the Eden Gate entrance directly across the street. We do think that every parcel has the right to develop, but at this point, we wouldn't be willing to consider anything more than a handful of estate-style lots without the entrance situation being addressed and a better location being proposed. This is just a blow up of the entrance point so you can see it again. The entrance is proposed in this area here. This house is no longer there, nor is that one. But this would be where the entrance point would be. And again, Eden Gate comes in right here. The zoning amendment criteria, we'll go through them quickly. Number one is the comprehensive plan. As mentioned, this comprehensive plan denotes this as specialty housing, which this would not be consistent with, although the zoning district would, but as developed as a detached single-family development, it would not be consistent with. The current conditions and character of the structures and uses in each district. Because the area is comprised predominantly of single-family detached dwellings, a new single-family development would be consistent with the current conditions and character of the area. Criteria 3, the most desirable use. We do think, given the surrounding land uses, that single-family residential would likely be the most desirable use here. Criteria 4, conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. We have no reason to believe that this development would reduce land values throughout the jurisdiction. But criteria 5 is our most concerning one, which is the responsible growth, development and growth. And that is allowing a development with a right-in, right-out entrance would not be responsible given the traffic safety concerns that staff has at this time. So we are recommending an unfavorable recommendation to town council. However, should the commission choose to forward a favorable recommendation, we think it should be with the 3 standard commitments that we encourage for all rezonings, and that would be in addition to the ones the petitioner is voluntarily presenting to you tonight. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
So 900 East, is that considered a secondary corridor or a primary?
It's a collector street.
And who has jurisdiction on 900 at that section? I know jurisdiction hops all over the place.
It is Avon.
Avon does on this, has that jurisdiction over that section of 900 of the street. Okay.
Does it intend to keep that as a collector with development going up farther north?
I have not been made aware of any changes to the classification, and that would be done through a thoroughfare plan amendment, and we would likely do that with an update of the thoroughfare plan.
Okay.
Every time we have something that is on 900, I just. Any other questions for staff?
What was that minimum lot size commitment? They had that list of commitments.
6,600 square feet.
Was that 0.15 acre? Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll hear from the petitioner.
Hi, Caitlin Dofer with Drees Homes. Address is 900 East 96th Street, Suite 100, Indianapolis, Indiana 46240. Thank you. To introduce you to who we are as a company, Drees has been a family-owned and operated company for 96 years now. We are a smaller builder. We operate in 10 different states right now and have been in Indianapolis for the last 20. We are a smaller builder. Last year, we closed around 200 homes compared to some of our other competitors that are usually at about 1,500. We really focus on quantity over quality, and we look for ideal high-demand locations like Avon. Next slide, please. One of the things that really makes us unique as a company is our care initiative. And this really comes back to focusing on quality internally, along with our homes and our customers. practicing effective communication, always doing the right thing throughout the build process, building relationships with our customers, and really making sure that we are hitting that exceptional quality when it comes to our homes. And overall, this really drives what we're really proud of, which is an over 91% of customers would recommend us to family and friends. So staff did a really good job of kind of going over the project generally. Location map, we are north of Highway 36, just west of 900. Zoning map, we do see that there is R4, R5 zoning in the area, as well as that commercial along US 36. Future land use map does identify specialty housing, and I'll touch on that in a little bit, how we do think that our product would count as specialty housing. And then the site itself, about 16.5 acres. We do have about 250 feet of frontage along 900. There's an existing access easement for our neighbor to the south that we had to be mindful of as we were contemplating the land plan. That Eden Gate entrance across the street and existing perimeter tree lines that we want to maintain as much as possible as well. So as we put together our concept plan, we are proposing 49 single-family detached lots. These would be single-story empty nester targeted product. Based off of several conversations with staff and feedback that we got during our TAC meeting, we have pushed the entrance as far north as possible to create as much distance from that existing Eden Gate entrance as possible. That proposed right-in, right-out entrance does meet the minimum 200-foot distance requirement from Eden Gate. And because we are at 49 lots, we also meet the one entrance requirement. We are maintaining that existing access easement just past our entrance for that neighbor to the south. And we have about 3.38 acres of open space, or about 20.6%. Going into our product a little bit, we are proposing our single-story ranch style product. We would offer 5 different floor plans in this community, ranging from 1,500 to 2,700 square feet. We are a semi-custom builder, so a buyer can come in, choose their lot, choose their preferred floor plan, as well as any options or add-ons that they would like to. Those include outdoor living options, living room extensions, dining room extensions, sunrooms. They can really customize it to whatever best fits their needs. And again, this is empty nester targeted. Next slide, please. Looking at the interior finishes a little bit, this is where the customization really becomes fun. All of our buyers get to go through our design center with our design professionals and customize their interiors however they like. So whether it's designer kitchens, if you have a dog and you want a dog wash station, we can absolutely build that in. We also have some bathroom modifications too, and the outdoor living options as well. Next slide, please. Linda mentioned that we are proposing commitments with the R4 zoning. We recognize that R4 comes with a broad range of uses as well as some smaller development standards. So we're proposing commitments that ensure that no matter what happens with this development, quality is going to come first. So we are proposing a maximum density of 2.99, which equates to no more than the 49 lots that we're proposing. A minimum lot size of 6,600, which is actually in line with the R3 standards. A minimum lot width of 53, minimum ground floor area of 1,500, which again is larger than R3. And that only single-family detached development is proposed on the site. So this petition, zoning petition, really boils down to the land use. Is this the highest and best land use for the property? And looking at the comp plan, we see 2 of the overarching goals of the comp plan is encouraging residential infill development and creating opportunities for all residents. Staff even said it in their staff report. The proposed single-family residential subdivision would be the most desirable use for land. and that specialty housing designation encourages housing diversity in the area. Next slide, please. So the question is new single-story home, is it easily available on the market today? So these are active listings in the Avon area today. There's 74. If you're looking for a single-story home, you have 21 options, but 14 of those were built before 2000. So if you're in the market for a new single-story home, you're a discernible buyer, you don't want to compromise on quality, you have 3 options right now that were built in the last 10 years. Next slide, please. So what about sales over the last 12 months? Well, there's been 610 sales, 238 of which were single story. Of those, 35 were built in the last 10 years, which means that 6% of sales in the last 10 months were single story, newer built homes, which seems like a pretty small piece of the pie if you're looking at the overall housing market in Avon. So now for the traffic study, staff did ask us to conduct a traffic study as part of this petition. So we looked at the 4 intersections identified on the screen. Next slide, please. This was our original entrance design, which went to TAC and had a discussion there. It was further south on the property and north is to the west, just to orient you. This was a proposed full access. It warranted a dedicated left turn lane. And it did not meet the 300 distance requirement for full access. Next slide, please. So based off of our conversations at TAC, feedback from staff, that's how we got the right in, right out entrance. We pushed it as far north as possible, hitting that 200-foot distance. We are maintaining the access requirement of only having 49 lots on one access, and we're having minimal impact to our neighbors. The right in, right out entrance is perfectly positioned about halfway in between 2 roundabouts, the 100 North roundabout, which is existing, and then the proposed roundabout at Angelina Way, which is scheduled to be constructed this year. This will create convenient options for anyone, turning right in, right out and being able to get themselves back on track no matter where they want to go. But again, this is a zoning petition. So we're focusing on the land use. The entrance is something that can be detailed and discussed at the primary plat stage. So the rezoning criteria wants us to look at the comprehensive plan, which we believe does encourage infill development, which this is, and hits the specialty housing designation. Since there have been 6% of sales in the last 12 months, that would fall into this newer single family or single story home. Current conditions and character, we believe this is consistent with new single family development, factoring in current conditions and character of the area. We do believe it's the most desirable land use. This is from the staff report. Next slide, please. Conservation of property values. The last 12 months of sales within a 1/4 mile radius of Briarwood averaged $358,000. We are anticipating $425,000 for our homes. And we do believe this is responsible growth. Again, the comp plan encourages residential infill development. HWC reviewed our traffic study and said that at 49 lots, the generated trips were below the threshold for a full traffic study, and it's not anticipated to have a significant impact on traffic operations in the surrounding area. And with this empty nester targeted product, we would be providing housing options for existing Avon residents who want to downsize and value customization. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
I have a question about your assertion that this would qualify as specialty housing, even though our plan specifically says single-family homes are not specialty housing. Are you just using the fact that these are single stories, that these are ranch homes that make it qualify as specialty housing?
The comprehensive plan has a very broad definition for specialty housing. So we are using the current market data to show that it's a very underserved market. And because it's underserved, we would argue that this would be specialty housing then.
And how do you address the concerns about safety? I like the concept of this. As a person whose knees sound like a percussion section going up and down stairs, I am keeping my eyes open for ranch options, and I like the general idea of this. I do not like I said, every time there's something on 900, it just gives me a headache before I even come here, because we have so many traffic problems, right in, right out. Even though we've got the two roundabouts to the north and the south, those roundabouts aren't necessarily that close. And I can just anticipate, people who are driving north needing to turn into that. I can just see one more bottleneck of traffic with the right in, right out. And I'm not sure what the solution is. I'm really not. We've got multiple jurisdictions that control 900. We've got all kinds of construction. That's a big concern to me, is that right in, right out entrance. Honestly, any entrance coming in and out, adding an additional entrance is a concern, but that's not where we are. But I guess those are my two concerns. I'm not sure that just because it's a ranch home makes it fall within the definition of specialty housing. I appreciate the concept a lot, but I'm not sure you've met the requirements of our ordinances.
Is it common that empty nesters require 3 and 4 bedroom homes?
We see more often that 2-bedroom homes struggle in the market, because usually you'll have a guest bedroom and then an office as well. So that's why the 3-4 bedrooms are really the sweet spot as far as demand.
And is there going to be an age restriction that targets the empty nester community, or?
We would not propose age restricted here. At this size of a development, since it's smaller, it can be a burden to the HOA. There's additional policies and paperwork, and that can be cumbersome on the HOA of this size.
Correct.
So we would be focusing on targeted, and we would do that through not allowing playgrounds, basketball goals, trampolines in the HOA, and making sure that this is truly meant for empty nesters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone who has signed up to speak in support of this agenda item?
We have.
Sir, wait till.
So there's.
You want to say
there's
something, you come to the podium.
Some people that have checked both for and against.
If you want to speak for, please come to the podium. Okay, is there anybody here? I can't imagine why everyone's sitting here who would like to speak out against this agenda item. Do we have anybody
The
who signed
first
up?
one is George Antel.
Okay. Please state your name and address. Sorry. 10 minutes, yep.
I won't take long. George Antal, 8772 Prairie Trail. My property is the westmost property that if you face to the north, you would see this property. And I'm also not opposed to homes. It's just the number of homes, and I didn't really have this comment until tonight, and I saw that plan. To the president's point, on 900, you're going to be forcing people to take a right that want to take a left. And if you take a right, you head towards Costco. So people are going to want to take a left, and they're going to add more traffic going south. And the point you made is valid also, that if you stop and you want to take a left, if you're going north and you can't get in, that traffic will just back up along that S curve, I can tell you right now. And that will be hard for us to get out of Prairie Trail. So I'm not opposed to the homes. The reason I checked both, so I'm not opposed to houses. I'm not opposed to the ranch houses. It's just the number of them. And now my comments about that entrance. So if that entrance you can figure it out and the density you can figure it out, I'm not opposed to homes there. And then I had a question. It's actually for Caitlin, and I tried to email her Friday when I got my paperwork. And this isn't her fault, but I emailed Friday and got an email kickback on the weekend. I don't know why it took a day for it to get kicked back, but it was about the tree line. So maybe she can answer that now, or she can email me later. But we've got large mature trees. I've probably got some that are, I probably have a dozen that are 50 to 100 and some years old, as do some other people. And I don't think it's a problem because they're just behind a wire fence that was there for the horses that used to be there. So I think the trees are on our property, but I haven't hired a surveyor to go out and check. And I don't think that people that will move into this new subdivision would care if those trees are there either. I doubt they would come down. But my general question is, would that tree line with those mature trees be taken down? I don't think so. So I'm not opposed to the project. It's just the number of homes, and that entrance bothers me. So that's it.
Thank you. Next.
Tim Pettigrew.
Please state your address.
Tim Pettigrew, 8854 Prairie Trail. I live in Prairie Manor. I've got a handout for you guys to follow along. Just a brief history on 900 East and the problems we've got. Planning Commission, October 2023, talking about the Lennar townhomes. 86 residents along that road said there's traffic problems there. We brought those signatures in, and we still have those problems. Planning Commission, November 2023, again for Lennar townhomes. We went to the police department dispatch, and they gave us their traffic accident log. And 900 East and Highway 36, we had a 71% increase in traffic accidents. And also between 20 and 23, 900 East Angelina Way, 165% increase in traffic accidents. So traffic is a major problem. We said criterion 5, this is not responsible growth and development. We also went in Planning Commission December 2023, again, Lennar townhomes. So we actually hired or acquired a third party to come in and use state-of-the-art radar recorders to actually tell us what's going on 900 East. Is this our imagination or what? They came back and the report said we had almost 92% of the cars were speeding going down 900. And 66 were enforceable violations. So traffic volume-wise, this was a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday survey. We had already met the 2028 traffic volumes going down that road, what the projections were. Town council meeting.
Your time is up. Thank you. It's 2 minutes. Okay. Next.
Ron Frazier.
Just give me a second, please. Ron Fraser, 8806 Prairie Trail in the Prairie Manor edition. Just to add on to what Tim was talking about, the average selling price of houses in Prairie Manor are $606,000. They're projecting $425,000. The average size of our properties are around the 5,000 square feet. They're talking 1,500 to 2,000. Something doesn't quite gel there with the square footage to the price range. Regarding the R4, all the properties around there are R2. Again, we don't have an issue with the single family residences. We do have an issue with the number of properties that we put into that space. For my backyard, I'd be looking at 3 houses. So my yard would be looking at 3 houses. You know, that's, anyway. Also, the tree line is is the trees are all on our property. That piece of land has pretty well been raised. There is no trees on it. There was 200-odd-year-old trees on that property. They've all been taken off. Everything's gone off that property except piles of tree trash. It's been sitting there for years and has had fires and all sorts of things going on that property. And we have a water issue where, because all those trees have been taken out, now all the water runs from the northern part of that property to the south, and we now have lakes sitting around our properties because of what's been done on that land, the way it's been demolished and destroyed. I have an issue with it, whatever's put on there. If they're going to raise that land to run it back towards the middle to some sort of drainage, that's going to then put a couple of feet of dirt or something like that I'm going to be looking at towards the properties and some of the areas. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next person. Is there anybody else who would like to come up and speak? Ma'am?
I was here for something else, but I actually,
need your
I'm
name
sorry,
and
my
ad-
name is Michelle Logan. I'm at 1764 Water Oak Way. I happen to go up 900 multiple times a day, every single day. And I am shocked that any proposal that would add an entrance exit onto 900, because it is dangerous. Every time I go down that road, there are accidents. People are speeding. When I did a ride along with the police, that was the first thing we did, was tend to an accident where someone right at that bend drove off the road, and the cop said, "Oh yeah, it's over here. It happens all the time." And there's a school right there, and the thought of someone just using the roundabout that's pretty busy in the morning with lots of kids as just make U-turns all the time. I mean, I think that is just absolutely wholly inappropriate for that area. It's already dangerous, and that road can't handle anymore without the road being taken care of first. So I hope these people get what they're looking for, because I would be real unhappy if that was going to be right outside my house too. That's a big problem. So that's it. Good luck.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? How much time do we have left? We have time for one more speaker. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Public hearing portion is closed. Discussion. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. What time is it? 9:30. Okay, 5 minutes of rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and providing your feedback. We do appreciate it, and we want to be good neighbors as we try and problem solve how to make this development the best it can be. To address some of the concerns, the tree line, we have designed the perimeter lots to be deeper to accommodate that tree line and make sure that it is not negatively impacted. And then as far as the drainage concern too, drainage calculations would be factored in during the construction plan stage. And by law, we are not allowed to negatively impact any neighbors with a development. So those are the two. And then as far as the entrance, we do recognize it's a challenge on this site. The frontage is pretty tight at 250 feet. And we recognize too that 900 has a lot of traffic flowing through Avon. So we would like to request a continuance to take the next month to work with staff, because we do believe that there's an entrance design that we can achieve and that can be safe. And so we'd like to take the next 30 days to brainstorm that and come back next month and show you our options.
Is this your first request for continuance?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so this would be granted as continuance by right. Do I hear a motion? Did you want to say something? Oh, sorry. I thought I saw a look on your face that says, wait a minute, I need to say something. Okay.
I move that we continue this until the February 24th meeting.
I'll second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Rockerbrand.
4.
Reed.
4.
Spencer. Kaufman.
4.
Ransberg.
4. This agenda item is moved to the February 24th meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other business that needs to be attended to?
Yes, the commission does need to appoint a representative to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Neglected to put that on your agenda, but along with reorganization, which can occur next month, the appointment to BZA needs to occur tonight. And your current representative is Paul Guckenberger, and he did express interest in continuing in that role.
Is this a simple aye and nay motion?
I'll nominate Paul Guckenberger to be the representative to BZA.
I'll second that.
And since he's not here to object, it's just that, do we need to take a tally? Okay, let's go ahead and vote on that.
Four.
Hang on.
Four.
Spencer.
4.
Rockenbrand.
4.
Ransford.
4. Is there anything else? Okay, committee reports.
Redevelopment met last week. In addition to the invoice approvals, we got information put together regarding professional services agreement for Financial Solutions Group and public hearing and resolution regarding the final approval of the lease agreement for the Civic Center.
Okay. BZA, we heard the family promise zoning requests, and I'm trying to think what else we had on that one in that meeting. Usually Paul handles that for me.
Yeah, the most recent BZA, we had the special exception for the Kava.
Oh, and for the Kava, yes, yeah, we did that as well. So, okay. Anything else for the good of the order? If not, meeting adjourned.